I heard Avram Nissan may have a meeting, so he may need to tape it if someone can record it.
We're starting the third parak, and that's called Ein Sadin. Ein Sadin means that you're not allowed to trap. So that's one of the Lamatas Malachis. And the way that we show them want to know if you're allowed to do Ochel Nefesh, why you're not allowed to trap. Why should it be us? If you know you have fish over here, fish or birds, whatever you have, you want to. So why you're not allowed to trap? So it's similar, like in other ways. Other malachas also, you're not allowed to do everything for Ochel Nefesh. You're not allowed to cut down the wheat or na'amer. There are many malachas that you're not allowed to do, and the Rishonim Taka have to figure out what's the cloud. Which malachas are you allowed to do? Which ones are you not allowed to do? Rashi over here says that you're not allowed to do even Ochel Nefesh if it was possible to do earlier. And these things you could have done earlier. Taisus argues, he says, no, Ochel Nefesh should be mutter even if it could have been done earlier. He says over here, the reason is because he just refers us that the Ketzira, that he says that Melisha Va'elech, only from kneading and on, as far as about making bread. And over there, it seems to be the things that are usually done in the kitchen are the ones that are mutter, the ones that are done on the factory level, like the ones that are done on a big level, on a big scale. So those are the things that they answer. Maybe it's the rice also. That's a sugi already. How come some malachas are mutter, some are aser? But just to take the fact here that Seder trapping is aser. So the Mishnah is going to talk about something which is already semi-trapped, is that and taking it out of your enclosure that you have your fish or your bird or your animal. So is it considered trapping or not? If it's already trapped, then you're allowed to take it. It's already trapped before Yom Tov. But if it hasn't been trapped yet, or it's only semi-trapped, and now you're going to, by taking out, you're going to have to do another trapping. That's going to be the issue of the Mishnah. So the first thing it says is Ein Sadin Dagim and HaBivorim B'Yom Tov. So this word Bivorim, sometimes people pronounce it Biburim and Biber, but I found that it's really a Latin word or Greek, whatever, and it's in English also that's called vivarium. And that has to do with a place, a habitat, the artificial habitat, the man-made habitat for living beings, which would be over here, both fish and animals and birds. And just like you have an aquarium, so it's aquarium, and this is a vivarium, just lesson of living. And the word probably is pronounced Vevorim, but we'll say it as it comes. It's I think the English translation will be a vivarium. Ein Sadin Dagim HaBivorim B'Yom Tov. So even if you have it already trapped, you have the fish in some kind of a pond that you've already collected them, or you're raising them over there and they're multiplying. So it's still called trapping because you have to go fishing for them, even if you have this already artificial vivarium for them, but you still have to catch it from there. And it seems in the Mishnah, from the continuation of the Mishnah, that's going to say that animals and birds on with it sometimes they're going to go on and say that even them, if it's going to be a very big area that you have to go trapping them even inside this enclosure, even by animals and birds, is going to be asa. So well, that's the word one more line. We'll come back to something about mazonos right away. I'll just skipping a line for a second. The Mishnah distinguishes between fish, that it says Ein Sadin Dagim, but that it says Aval Sadin Chai Va'ov. That even though birds and animals, chaya means a wild animal, which means like deer, because when you have a cow or sheep or goat, there's no trapping over there. That's all domesticated animals, and the Mishnah doesn't even mention anything about trapping over there. But a chaya, if you have deer, and even if you have them in an enclosure and they're able to reproduce over there, but still you have to catch them inside the trapping. So that's going to be the issue of that's called Seder. Here it says that that's considered trapped enough, and you're allowed to take it from there, not because it's considered trapped. So just to make this distinction, the Mishnah says that fish are more chomor than animals and birds, because even in a case where you are allowed to trap animals and birds, but you're not allowed to trap the fish. So it comes out, the poskim say that since the fish are underwater, so they're considered more out of reach. And even if it's a small pond, even a very small pond, they also say that it's usher. Some say that if it's clear water, then it's mutter, if you can see them, and it's small, and you don't have to go mamish fishing. But if it will be murky water in a way that you can't see them, so then it's considered safe, even in a very small pond.
So if you have your own tank in your house?
Right. So if you have your own tank, so usually people who have a tank, so they don't eat those fish. The aquariums, there's no, but usually you'd have in the fish store. In the fish store, over there, the ones who have the tank, they have the bathtub over there in the fish store, that they have the different kinds of fish. So that is mamish. There's no shade over there, I think, because the mamish just like laying over there, you don't have to pick it up, you don't have to do anything. I think that will be mutter also. They're not also under cover of water, like the mime slulim. So I think that case will be mutter because the mamish just have enough water to keep them alive. But if you have any kind of a pond, so then it says you're not allowed to trap them because they are not yet considered trapped, even though it's yours and you have a small pond. Ain't something that cannot be borrowed. And the Mishnah is going to right away say, but you are allowed to trap the deer, the chaya and the ophos that you have in some kind of a vivarium. You would be allowed to because they're considered already trapped. And we'll talk about that's going to be today's sugya of how small does it have to be to be considered trapped. If you have a big acre, an acre, 2 acres, you have to go trapping. So that's going to be also even by animals and birds. But even what's mutter by animals and birds, that is a small enclosure, by fish is still awesome.
Rabbi, one thing that came up in my mind is that there's a distinct difference between freshwater and not freshwater fish. So people that keep aquariums, if they're keeping like a freshwater situation, it could be that the fish could live without them. But those who are keeping the more artificial, not freshwater situations, so they are completely at the mercy of the people running the tanks for them to live. Would that make a difference?
So far, we spoke about just Seder. So there's no distinction. But your issue is going to be in the words that I skipped about Mazonos, which is coming up right now. So let's finish off with this. As far as Seder, that depends if it's in how easy reach it is. If it's hard to reach, it's hard to catch, even if they're right there, but you have to still find them. So that's why fish are usher. And chayiv of is mutter. That's what it says so far. But the point you're referring to is what I skipped. Here it says, "Ein nosen l'fnei mazonos." By a fish that you're not allowed to trap, you're also not allowed to give them. You're not allowed to feed them. And in contrast, the animals and the birds that you are allowed to trap, it says also "V'nosen l'fnei mazonos." So interesting. The Gemara is not going to discuss it. Anything about the mazonos issue. The Mishnah puts it together. It goes together. If you're not allowed to trap them, you're not allowed to feed them. If you're allowed to trap them, you're allowed to feed them. And here the Rishonim have to come in again because the Gemara doesn't explain. The Mishnah doesn't explain. The Gemara doesn't explain as far as I saw. So the Rishonim talk about why is the issue to give them food. So Rashi brings down the Gemara on Shabbos that says that if it does if you don't have the responsibility to feed them, so they're not yours, or even if you officially own them, but they're not your responsibility to feed because they feed on their own, so then you're not allowed to feed them. And that's halacha. That's what we spoke about it once. Cats in the street, dogs, you're not allowed to feed them if they don't belong to you. I didn't see a heter yet. The people that do say that there are people that feed cats even on Shabbos, but I don't know a heter. Maybe there's some heter that I don't know of. But animals that do belong to you, there's an osan alecha that it's your responsibility. It's yours, and you're responsible, and they need you to feed them. So then you are allowed to feed them. That's what Rashi learns in the Mishnah, and he seems to put it into the Mishnah, even though the Mishnah doesn't say if it belongs to you or not. And as Rav Manuel is saying, that sometimes they do need you, sometimes they don't need you. It might be able to fend for themselves. Rashi says that the fish, even if they're yours, but they're able to fend for themselves because they are able to take from things that are growing in the pond. So again, it's going to depend: is it in the pond or is it if it's in a fish tank? They don't have no food. You have to give them the food also. Rashi would say you're allowed to feed them. Taisha says different shot than Rashi. Taisha says it has to do with Seder. Since you're not allowed to trap them, so you're not allowed to feed them because Xeria might come to trap them. So like hands off. So give them whatever food you have to do, give them before Yantif, and don't feed them on Yantif because if you're going to feed them, you might come to trap them also. So two pshatim, and I think that we pass him like Tosfos that even if you have to feed them, but you're not allowed to on the ones down Yantif, and Yantif is more chomor because you might trap them. Shabbos is no shash you're going to trap them. But because you're not allowed to do anything with them anyway, what are you going to do with a fish on Shabbos? But on Yantif, that you're allowed to eat them, you're allowed to shech them, not shech them, you're allowed to kill them and eat them. So you might make a mistake and trap them also. So therefore, you're not allowed to feed them because you're not allowed to trap them. Okay, so we got through the Mishnah so far. The Mishnah said that you're not allowed to trap fish from the vivarium on Yantif. And we're saying even if it's a small pond, and you can't feed them either, according to Rashi, because they can fend for themselves, according to Tosfos, because you might trap them. You're allowed to trap animals and birds that are already in the vivarium, and we're going to see that's because they're already considered trapped. But no there's no issue to give them food. Rashi will say because they need you to feed them, and Tosfos will say because there's no chance you're going to trap them because you're allowed to trap them. Okay, good. The Gemara is going to come out that he's not arguing; he's coming to explain. We'll see the Gemara coming up that he's explained. Tanakh says that not all vivariums are the same, that it depends how big they are, that there's going to be a very big one, so then Chayiv is also going to be Aser. If it's still lacking trapping, means even though it's in an enclosure, but still you're going to have to work hard to trap them even in the enclosure. but then it's considered also because you consider trapping. And if it's so close, so small that it's not lacking any more trapping, it's already considered trap. So then you're allowed to do it because it's considered already in the bag. The Gemara is going to talk about what all this means. The Gemara is the kasha that in our Mishnah it says that chayiv ha'of is mutter. You're allowed to take them from the enclosure because they're already trapped. And the kasha is, Rashi says the exact opposite. Reminu bevorm shel chayiv v'shalofos ein tzadin meyem b'yamtav. Here it says you're not allowed to. It's talking about, we're not talking about the fish. The Gemara doesn't discuss the fish at all, as far as I remember. It's just discussing the chay and the oaf. The Mishnah said the chay oaf is mutter to trap from the enclosure. And the Rashi says you're not allowed to. That's the contradiction. Also, the mazonos goes together. You're not allowed to feed them, since not, according to Tosfos, since you're not allowed to trap them. So it's a contradiction both in animals and in birds. Kasha chaya chaya, kasha ofas ofas, because the Mishnah says both of them are permissible, and the Rashi says both of them are also. You're not allowed to take them out of the enclosure. First, the Gemara finds a machlokis and is going to deal with machlokis in Masechah Shabbos. We find the machlokis how closed in the animal has to be considered trapped. And over there, it's talking about a different subject. That's not talking about what you're allowed to take out of an yontif. That's talking about on Shabbos to trap them. It means it's the same principle. Whatever you're not allowed to do to trap them, if it's already in that position, so they're considered trapped, and you're allowed to take it out on yontif. So it's the same thing. Whatever will bring them in, whatever taking out of the wild and putting into this enclosure is considered trapping, that means that it's already trapped, and therefore it'd be allowed to take it out of there. But if taking it out of the wild and getting into this enclosure is not considered trapped because it's so big, so then taking it out of there is going to be considered trapping because till now it wasn't trapped. So the Gemara is comparing the two subjects. And as far as trapping on Shabbos, and as this will also be on Yom Tov also, taking it out of the wild and putting it into this enclosure is considered, how much it have to be enclosed. Says Machlokes Rabbi Yehuda Rabbanan, how much enclosed does an animal have to be considered trapped? The Tanan Rabbi Yehuda Omer, in order to be chayiv for trapping a bird, it has to be into a migdal. Migdal is like a closet of some sort. It's a armoire. They might call it a closet. So that's very small. Once he's in the closet, like so to speak, so that's the aron. So that's small enough that he's considered trapped. But if it would be in the house, you just got a bird into the house. It's not considered trapped because you have to do a lot of running around until you catch it even in the house. So that's what Rabbi Yehuda says, that when is he chayiv for trapping a bird? When he gets it into the closet. Tzvi labais. When is a deer considered trapped? And you got it into the house. Once it's in the house, it's trapped. Even though you might have to run around the living room there, we'll see how much that is, the dining room. But in the house, it's already trapped. It's not going anyplace. So that's considered trapping. Then nothing more interjects. According to Yehuda, the only way to be chayiv for trapping a deer is only in the house, which is very small. But if you got it into the vivarium, this enclosure, which is relatively much bigger than the house, so it's not considered chayiv yet because you didn't trap it. You have a lot of work to do even after it's in the vivarium. But the Chachamim continue in the Bryce in the Mishnah. The Chachamim omrim tzipor lemigdal. That part they agree that a bird is only considered trapped once it's in the closet. But tzvi labayis lagina lachatzin lebevarim. They say that a deer is not only in a house. True, of course, a house is considered trapping a deer, but even in the garden, even in the courtyard, even in the vivarium, also that's considered all trapping. And they say here machlokis that according to Rabbi Yehuda in the vivor, the vivarium is not considered trapped, and therefore he would say that you're not allowed to take it. The Brisa on top of the page that says that you're not allowed to would be Rabbi Yehuda, because he says that a vivor is not considered trapped, and therefore if you took it from the wild into the vivor, it's not considered seder, and so too he would say that taking it from there is considered, now I'm trapping it. If I'm going to take it out of the vivarium, so now I trapped it because it wasn't considered trapped till now. But the Mishnah that says you are allowed to take it out of the vivarium is because they said that into the vivarium is considered trapped. So that's the Chachamim. The Chachamim say that even getting into the Chatzer, the Gina, Chatzer, Bevorin, is also considered trapping on Shabbos, and therefore once it's in the Bevor, it's already trapped. I'd be allowed to take it out of the Yom Tov. So we have, in order to reconcile the contradiction in the Mishnah and the Brisa, our Mishnah and the Brisa, our Mishnah says it's mutter by a chaya to take it out of the Vevor, and Brisa says that it's also, it's very nice that one is Rabbi Yehuda, one is Rabbanan. Our Mishnah, the Mishnah goes according to Rabbanan that's considered trapped already. But the Gemara says that's only good as far as Ofos Kasha, but it's still a contradiction by birds because both of them say that it's only considered trapped when it's in a migdal, in the closet. Even everyone agreed on that. The Chachamim and the Rabbi Yehuda both agree. So how can our Mishnah say that it's considered trapped when it's in a Vevor? Let's try to answer that there are two kinds of vivariums. Some of them are open, like the ones that you have only for animals, and therefore, if you put a bird over there, the bird's not impressed. The bird just flies away, so it's not considered trapped. And that's going to be the brisa that says you cannot take it from the Veivaris because it's an open, it's unroofed. And our mission that says that it's trapped is because it has a roof, and even though it's quite big, but still it's considered trapped. But that's not true because both of them say that a house is not. Here it spoke about a migdal in contrast to a house. But a bias, the kaviba a house surely has a roof. By a baby, you can talk about if it has a roof, it doesn't have a roof. But because animals usually don't have to have a roof on top of their enclosure. But a house surely has a roof, and it says that everybody holds that a bird into a house is not considered trapped. But bias, the kaviba mukura dummy, the bias low. Everybody holds that getting a bird trapped into a house is not considered caught yet. So in our Mishnah, how could it say that you're allowed to take on Yontif, you're allowed to take that bird out of the Veivar? It's not considered trapped yet. So now you're catching it now. So it should say that. So Rabbi Baravuna says that the case where it says that it's not considered trapped means both Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbanan say only inside a migdal, and the price on top of the page that said that you're not allowed to do it on Yontif is because it's the tzipor drawer. Tzipor drawer they translate as a sparrow, and the sparrow, as you notice, they come to the house and they feel very much at home. Sometimes you see them in the shuls, and they call it tzipor drawer because they feel comfortable. They don't feel trapped. Even if they're in an enclosed place, they don't feel trapped. Shena Makabelis Morris. He says the reason why it's called drawer, right away, the Morris going to say it always feels like it's comfortable at home. Shena Makabelis Morris, it doesn't accept authority. It doesn't feel like it's under somebody's authority. Most birds do, and tzipor drawer is an exception.
Rebbe, Rashi also has
Yes.
a very interesting two-liner. He says, drawer means shadara babayis kabesade, shiodas lishtamet bezavi tabayis lekol tzad, v'lechei nikra drawer al shem dira shadara bekol makom.
So that most of the Gemara say right now, there's one more line. She puts in the point that it jumps around and it feels comfortable. It doesn't feel well. I think like a pigeon, you could say, when it gets into a house, it feels very uncomfortable, like it doesn't know how to get out. But the tzipor drawer, sparrow, I think you see that they're very comfortable. That's what the person says. In Makabelas Moritz, the time of the Rabbi Shmuel. This is what Rashi is going on. Lamanikra Shmuel tzipor drawer. Why is it called the word drawer? Shadar b'bayis kabasad. As Rashi explains that it lives in it's just as comfortable in the house as in the field because it's able to jump around and it doesn't feel trapped. So what do we say now? There are two kinds of birds. It depends. When is a bird considered trapped? In a closet, everything's considered trapped. Even the tzipor drawer is also going to be considered caught once it's in a closet. But in the house, other birds will be considered trapped, and the beaver also for that reason. That's what we're going to say that our Mishnah is talking about other kinds of birds. Therefore, it's considered trapped even in a vivarium. But Bryce over here, the Mishnah and Shabbos that says that it's not considered trapped till it's in a closet, it's talking about a tzipor drawer, and that's going to be the Bryce on top of the page. So the more reconciled both the Chaya, that's Machlokes Rabbanan and Rabbi Yehuda, and by the Ophos, how to answer that question, the Gemara says it depends what kind of bird. Now the Gemara says once you said this, we can go back and not to say it's only going Machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbanan. That's just lucky. Once we came onto this and he said the different kinds of birds, so we can answer that also without getting involved in a machlokes. We can talk about two different kinds of vivariums, and really the truth is the Mishnah really says.
Rebbe, I lost the volume about 2 minutes ago. Hello? Hello, are you there, Rebbe? Hello? 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 There's been no sign, no sound,
Okay, now,
no
now is it
sound.
better? Okay, do you hear me
Yeah,
now?
it's the first time in 2.5 minutes or 3 minutes or so. It froze again. It's frozen.